Ectoplasm, Ghostly Residue, a video created, directed, and produced by Reverend Dr. Dikki-Jo Mullen. In the photo on this slide, we see Dikki-Jo's grandfather, Joseph, prior to going off to World War I. In this photo, there appears to be an ectoplasmic image. Within the cloud, one can see here a female figure holding what appears to be possibly flowers, and she has a rather high hat on up in the upper part of the picture. Dikki-Jo will talk about her grandfather and those phantoms seen in ectoplasm, which appears to a number of people, particularly around seances.
This is Dikki-Jo Mullen in Orlando, Florida. I'm a spiritualist medium. A medium is someone dedicated toward translating and explaining the subtle energies around us. The concept of, say, sound doesn't exist to a deaf person. The sixth sense doesn't exist to most of the rest of us. Yet there is proof that, thank goodness, there's a world beyond this one. Ectoplasm ties in with this idea of other dimensions. Is it ghostly residue, or is it just wishful thinking that loved ones who have passed away are no longer with us leave something? It's said that a living person entering a room always leaves some evidence of his or her presence, and does the spirit world do the same thing? The search for tangible proof to be verified by the five senses for the real existence of spirits, ghosts, and the afterlife is a tantalizing and interesting quest. Although connections with and messages from supernatural forces have been noted since the dawn of time, it was the mid-19th century, with the rise of the spiritualist religion, which began in 1848 with manifestations in upstate New York, which brought a focus on seeking information and spiritual guidance in greater detail for documentation. Mediums are highly sensitive individuals who serve as mediators with the spirit world and began to materialize messages for those who longed for communication. Materializing mediumship involves manifesting visible spectral forms, and sometimes these can be photographed, and they might include music or fragrances. Objects, usually flowers or feathers, might mysteriously float from above during gatherings called seances or sittings. Following the Civil War, when so many people lost so many loved ones, materializing mediumship became very sophisticated as a way of offering comfort. It was at that time that materializing mediums began to become conduits for a substance called ectoplasm. This is from the Greek word ektos, meaning outside, and plasma, which means something formed or molded. The term was coined in 1894 by Charles Richet, a French physiologist, aviator, a Nobel Prize winner, and novelist. Ectoplasm is actually the milky, slimy residue. It smells like ozone, which flows from the eyes, nose, ears, and mouth, and other bodily orifices of mediums while they are in a trance-like state. White veils and patches, suggestive of gauze or cheesecloth, emerge from the ectoplasm once it leaves a medium's body. From the background, the hands, faces, and limbs of the spirit guides are seen, kind of like they're on a television or movie screen. These represent the colors, textures, and memories of our lost loved ones, which exist still on another plane. The ectoplasm can manifest as a cloud or mass, then it usually rises to form a pillar. One report described a tiny fairy figure with an oversized head, which left the medium's mouth, circled overhead, and settled on the white mass which had emerged. Sometimes the cool, gel-like ectoplasm will emit a greenish glow, while at other times it remains white. When Richer performed tests following seances on the ectoplasm residue, he compared it with the science of the time to mucus and fat cells which had existed in the human body. Richer left a statement to summarize his findings on this really interesting subject. When we have fathomed the history of these unknown vibrations emanating from reality, we will doubtless have given them a degree of importance. This seems to suggest in a way that there was some suspicion of fraud, and at some times vintage photographs of ectoplasm seem to include obvious cutouts from magazines or sketches, or even human accomplices draped in cloth. Following World War II, amid numerous accusations of fraud, practitioners of spiritualism began to de-emphasize this practice of physical mediumship, and the appearance of ectoplasm became less frequent. Today's seances usually include more mental mediumship, with the medium in a trance relaying verbal messages, also table tipping, where the spirit world communicates through tapping or moving small tables can become popular instead. However, in recent times, there's been kind of a turnaround. Spiritual circles, especially in Germany and Australia in the 1990s, have some new instances of involving ectoplasm, which have been reported. The 1984 film comedy Ghostbusters, starring Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramos, also revived ectoplasm again. The spectral visitors make dramatic appearances in green or white slime, and even the license plate Ectomobile on the 1959 white Cadillac ambulance which the Ghostbusters drove read Ecto 1. This comedy classic, with its slew of ghosts accompanied by ectoplasm, has endured. On at least some level, the phenomena is real. We have to keep a sense of humor and be lighthearted, though, in communicating with the spirit world. The photograph shown in front shows my grandfather, Joe. In 1917, he was on his way to serve in World War I. And you can see behind him there is a cloud of ectoplasm with a figure from the spirit world, a spirit guide. I grew up in the spiritualist faith, and this photograph was actually taken as Grandpa Joe was about to depart for France. By the way, his boat was delayed in New York because there was a report that either a bad flu or a smallpox outbreak was on the boat, so they didn't release it, and then by the time he was ready to go, he was excused. The armistice was coming, the war was ending, and it's just very interesting that there was a spirit guide looking out for him. That was before my time. I wasn't present at that particular seance, but my grandmother Esther, who became Joe's wife, was a very gifted medium and was very insistent that this photograph is the real deal. And I feel good looking at it at any rate. If you are interested in creating some ectoplasm, and I don't encourage fraud. There's enough that happens in the spirit world that's real. I have personally been to seances in Key West and in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, two very haunted places with many, many places that offer seances that are described as entertainment, where the stage magic that was a part of some of the fraudulent seances is used. And I'll tell you, even having grown up in the field, some of it is awfully, awfully convincing. At the seance in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, the Civil War ghosts, of course, are so tangible. Many people claim they're reenactors and actually see them, very haunted. The seance that I went to there very much frightened a 14-year-old in the circle. And I took it upon myself to explain that the spirit world can't hurt us, they're friendly. More afraid of the people out on the street if one has to be afraid of anything. There is a way, though, to create ectoplasm. I emphasize this for fun, but if you do it, don't be surprised if paranormal events really occur, because the substance, if it doesn't emanate from the medium's body, actually has a life force around it, and it serves as sort of like a screen to show, tangibly show what the mediums might say if they see, say, a figure behind you and describe to spirit loved ones. 2 bottles of school glue, refrigerate it until cold, 4 to 8 ounces of liquid starch, a teaspoon of blue or green glow paint. All items that you can get for pennies: school glue, liquid starch, glow paint. Mix them all together. Begin with the glue and paint. When it's thoroughly mixed, add the starch to the desired consistency. Knead it into a clay-like ball and place the ghost slime in an airtight glass container. Refrigerate it, but don't freeze it until it's icy cold, and you can add foam shapes, eyes, rubbery teeth if you want to. But if you do this, and if you want to have it for a party, again, don't be surprised if you are joined by another entity. Being a spiritualist medium since I was a young child, one has to keep a sense of humor. And communicating with the spirit world is fun, it's lighthearted, but it is very, very sincere. And so study Grandpa Joe's picture, see what you think of the phenomena of ectoplasm.